Hello, everyone. Welcome to our launch announcement for Amazon CloudWatch Crosscon Observability. It's been 2 days that we have launched the feature, and we have started receiving very positive feedback from our customers. And your attendance today also confirms that it's going to be a very popular feature in Amazon CloudWatch. It's a pretty early session, so thanks for coming. And I hope you already had your coffees and ready for the session. But if not, no worries. It's going to be a pretty exciting session, and it's going to keep you awake. So let's get started. My name is Omur Kırıkçı. I'm Senior Product Manager in CloudWatch, and I'm going to be your host today. In our agenda, we will first start with your challenges in centralized monitoring. And afterwards, we're going to go through the benefits of Amazon CloudWatch Crosscon Observability and how it helps you to monitor and troubleshoot your applications that span across multiple AWS accounts. And later on the session today, I'm going to be joined on the stage by Anthony Giles from JPMorgan Chase. He's going to talk about their use case and how they leverage Amazon CloudWatch Crosscon Observability in their centralized monitoring. And later, at the end of our session, I'm going to have Bobby Hallan on the stage. He's our Senior Specialist Solution Architect, and he's going to walk us through the centralized monitoring capabilities of Amazon CloudWatch Crosscon Observability with a live demo. So before going into the details of our launch feature, let's step back and start with the motivation behind launching features like Amazon CloudWatch Crosscon Observability. We first built our flagship observability service, Amazon CloudWatch, to solve our challenges in diagnosing our own applications. But over the years, we witnessed that our customers also have exactly the same problems with Amazon. So since then, we are developing our features based on speaking to not only internal customers like Amazon, but also our external customers. So for example, the feature we're going to go through today, Amazon CloudWatch Crosscon Observability, is mainly driven by speaking to hundreds of customers and listening to their problems in monitoring. This is one of our top customer requests, and we are very happy to deliver it. Today, millions of AWS customers, they use AWS Observability to understand their health and performance of their applications and to improve their customer experience. AWS Observability partners and integrates with a wide range of third-party observability and cloud management tools that leverage near real-time feeds of AWS native telemetry to power their platforms. As you see here, CloudWatch comes with very powerful native analytics, insights, and machine learning features, as well as working with open source partners like Prometheus or Grafana to deliver you the best possible observability experience, regardless of which observability solution you pick. Okay, going back to our launch feature. What is the problem here we are trying to solve with Amazon CloudWatch Crosscon Observability? AWS best practices guides customers to deploy applications across multiple accounts to establish security and billing boundary between teams and to reduce the impact of operational events. But this creates challenges from a monitoring perspective. As enterprises grow and scale, data gets scattered across increasing number of accounts. This creates distributed data silos, making it hard to have a holistic view and single pane of glass observability across the organization. In most of the cases, this observability data is migrated into various tools in order to discover, analyze, and visualize cross-account telemetry. But this requires extra effort, leading to significant overhead and cost. And when not migrated and operated per account basis, this removes the correlation capability between cross-team telemetry data, leading to longer resolution times and less operator satisfaction and success. I'm seeing some of you feeling these challenges by heart, right? Can I see the hands? No one? Okay, so here's the solution. We continue to suggest AWS best practices to deploy applications across multiple accounts. But here today, we are announcing a game-changer monitoring capability, Amazon CloudWatch Cross-Account Observability. So now with this feature, you can seamlessly search, analyze, and visualize your cross-team telemetry data, including logs, metrics, and traces, as if you were operating in a single account without any account boundaries. And here are some of the benefits that you get out of Amazon CloudWatch Cross-Account Observability. It provides you a bird's-eye view across your organization, such that you can easily pinpoint performance bottlenecks and identify the impacted users easily. It provides you a better centralized monitoring capability than what you have today. It is easy to set up. All you need to do is to define your accounts and then link them to each other. And last but not the least, it comes with no extra cost. You can just run your existing observability features across your organization as if you were operating in a single account. Let me ask you a question here. How often you, as a member of central operations team or central security team, find yourself trying to troubleshoot an issue that impacts data that lies across tens, hundreds, or thousands of accounts? I assume the answer will be very frequent, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't be on this session. And the problems you often run into are not having access to the right data, not having permissions to run the right queries, not having all the data you need stitched together such that you're going to get the right answers, and more. Amazon CloudWatch Cross-Account Observability is here to address these problems. With this feature, we are introducing a new concept of monitoring account. And what does a monitoring account do? Monitoring account is a centralized view of cross-account telemetry data that lies across many individual accounts, which we call as source accounts. Today, what a lot of the customers have to do today to overcome this account boundaries is they have to create additional central repository of data, which creates extra cost and overhead due to this duplication. But with Amazon CloudWatch Cross-Account Observability, we come up with a way to deliver you all these cross-account capabilities with no additional cost. We are providing the monitoring account a read-only access to the telemetry data, which resides in the individual source accounts. And we believe this is a much more efficient way to achieve centralized monitoring. Configuring your cross-account setup is easy. All you need to do is define your monitoring account, your source accounts, and then link them to each other. Here, I'm just going to demonstrate you how to set up your centralized monitoring by using your individual account IDs. Assume that you are in an account that you would like to define as your monitoring account. All you need to do is to click on the settings link on the left nav menu and click on the configure button, which is on the up, for your monitoring account. When you click on configure, it's just going to take you to this page where you are supposed to type in your source account IDs along with which telemetry data that you would like to collect, metrics, logs, and traces, and then click on configure. Once you click on that configure, your monitoring account setup is completed. And when you set up your monitoring account, it creates you a URL. And when you copy and paste that URL into your browser, it's just going to take you to the settings page of your source account, which is this one. And as you see here, it provides you the ARN number of your monitoring account by default. So all you need to do is to select which telemetry data that you would like to share with your monitoring accounts, and then click on link. After that, your configuration is set up. As you see here, for example, we have two source accounts sharing telemetry data with the monitoring account. Similarly, you can group your source accounts using AWS organizations. So you can use your org IDs or OU units, organization units, to define your source accounts to share your telemetry with the monitoring accounts. By this way, if any account is joining to your organization, it's going to be automatically added to your cross-account monitoring setup on your behalf without any extra action required. And needless to say, all this onboarding, along with cross-account analytics, they are all available through programmatic access, including CloudFormation, AWS SDK, and CLI. Now that we have set up our cross-account monitoring, let's see how we can use Amazon CloudWatch cross-account observability to analyze our cross-account telemetry. If you remember, earlier I told you that you can analyze your cross-account telemetry as if you were operating in a single account, remember? As you see in the video here, when let me see if the video starts. Another click, okay. When I search for my error metric, for example, it lists me all my error metrics from all of my source accounts in a single list with account metadata attached. By the way, you'll be surprised to hear how many of our customers told us that this 12-digit account ID is not sufficient to understand the context behind accounts. So that's why Amazon CloudWatch cross-account observability comes with account labels on top of account IDs. Similarly, our customers also tell us that their monitoring starts with alerts. Hence, with Amazon CloudWatch cross-account observability, you can create your cross-account alarms to have a centralized view for your monitoring account across your organization and be notified when an alarm is triggered. And similarly, you can create cross-account dashboards on your monitoring accounts. This is going to provide you a bird's eye view across your organization and have a full visibility across your source accounts and multiple source accounts. It is a lot easier to operate across your organization with no account boundaries, right? Now let's see how we can use Amazon CloudWatch cross-account observability to analyze logs. As you see on the video, you can see all of your log groups from all of your source accounts in a single list. You can select the log groups under interest, and afterwards you can run your logs inside queries to identify most expensive Lambda requests, for example, like the Lambda functions calling each other from multiple source accounts. Contributor Insights is also available cross-account. So now you can set up your rules across your organization to identify top-end contributing services and events generating log entries. Cross-account Contributor Insights allows you to have a holistic view of whatever security events are happening in your organization. Previously, you need to browse between accounts, collect all this data manually. But now, they're all available in a single place. Our customers also tell us that one of the biggest challenges of monitoring applications as you scale up and have tons of resources is collecting all the telemetry, logs, metrics, and traces in a single place such that you will not be required to browse between multiple consoles in troubleshooting. And having all the data you need stitched together enables you to reduce your mean time to resolution. And this is what you get with CloudWatch Service Lens today. It integrates logs, metrics, traces, alarms, and other resource health information in a single place, providing you an end-to-end view of your application, enabling you to pinpoint performance bottlenecks and identify impacted users easily. And with Amazon CloudWatch cross-account observability, Service Lens and X-Ray comes cross-account now. So now you can enable your monitoring account to have a centralized view of your application, cross-account application, and easily pinpoint service-wide issues and reduce the impact of your operational events. Previously, you need to manually stitch all this data together and go through this heavy lifting. But now, with Amazon CloudWatch cross-account observability, it does all this manual work and remove the overhead for you. It is time to recap. So with Amazon CloudWatch Cross-Account Observability, your operators can find out, can identify application issues from a bird's eye view, regardless of which accounts, AWS accounts, the impacted resource belongs to. Amazon CloudWatch Cross-Account Observability allows your central teams easily access and query logs, metrics, and traces, and easily correlate these telemetry data such that you can identify root causes quickly. Again, it's easy to set up. All you need to do is to define your monitoring account and source accounts, and then link them to each other based on your use cases. And the last but not the least, it is natively available on your monitoring accounts with no additional cost. It provides read-only access to the telemetry data that resides in the source accounts. Okay, so since we are familiar with Amazon CloudWatch Cross-Account Observability, I would like to invite Anthony to the stage to tell us about their use case and how they leverage Amazon CloudWatch Cross-Account Observability. Anthony?
Thank you. By a raise of hands, who in here is a parent? That's a good number of you. So if you didn't raise your hand, who in here in your household you have someone that you cherish, you love, you take care of? It could be a parent, it could be a relative, it could be your favorite pet Tito. I want to say congratulations to everyone who raised their hand. You are a site reliability engineer. You are the site reliability engineer of your household. Your job is to make sure what you raise your hand for, that they have a stable, reliable, and resilient environment. What you raised your hand for, that they have an experience that's optimal, that you provide them each and every single day. You are the site reliability engineer of your household. And with that, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Anthony Giles. I head the Site Reliability Engineering Center of Excellence for Employee Experience Corporate Technology in JPMorgan Chase. I'm also part of the Site Reliability Engineering firm-wide leadership team. Now, as a company, what do we raise our hand for? At JPMorgan Chase, we raise our hands for our customers. Our customers are our number one asset. Our customers are our number one priority. Our customers deserve and expect reliable and dependable systems every single day, and site reliability engineering is a big part of that. So we focus on some major tenets, some major things at JPMorgan Chase when it comes to site reliability engineering: stability, reliability, and resiliency. We use our service level objectives to measure our performance. We are obsessed with monitoring and observability. We are constantly automating and doing toll reduction, and culture. Culture is key to what we do. Culture is something that we continuously build on, and culture is what makes us successful. Now, why is this important when we raise our hands for our customers? Well, we process an average of $9 to $10 trillion in payments per day. We serve 80% of the Fortune 500, and we operate as the bank of choice for roughly half of all US households. We have over 6,000 applications, 6,000, over 270,000 virtual workspaces, and over 55,000 technologists across the firm. Now, as you can imagine, with over 6,000 applications, as we move more and more applications to AWS every single day, that we have interacting applications across multiple AWS accounts. And I'm sure, like just about all you in here, we have multiple tools for metrics, logs, and traces. There's always a need for faster alerts and to streamline cost. And then there's the additional challenges of SREs to correlate data from multiple sources. Now, as the site reliability engineer of my household, I raise my hand for my 3 children. My oldest, that's metrics. That's Aubrey. She has the data for all the latest trends. That's why she's metrics. The second one, that's logs. That's Austin. Austin has detailed information on everybody, everywhere, on everything. He can tell you exactly what time you said something, what day you said something, and exactly what you said. He's like, no, Dad. You said you were going to give me that PS5 on this date and this time, and I have the log to prove it. That's Austin. He's logs. And my youngest, the 1-year-old, Audrey, I like to call her traces because she leaves a trace everywhere in the house she goes. I can follow her. Everywhere she goes, there's a trace. Now, wouldn't it be great if I could look at Aubrey, Austin, and Audrey all in one place, all at one time with a holistic view? So when something breaks in the house, I don't have to go to Aubrey, Austin, and Audrey separately. I could just see exactly what was the root cause. So Amazon hasn't solved that yet for parents. But as consumers, for metrics, logs, and traces, they did solve this for us as consumers. Now, JPMorgan Chase has taken the lead in the federated data lake. And one of the use cases that we actually tested this with was with the federated data lake, where you have multiple producer accounts, central account, multiple consumer accounts. So we were able to see in one central location the metric logs and traces across the board for all these accounts. So for example, if a producer account couldn't query Athena because we were sending the logs over and the traces over using Lambda functions, we were able to correlate that and see in real time. That is a key. Real time is essential to what you do, especially as a site reliability engineer. So this holistic view is very powerful. It was very helpful. There's also the MTTR reduction by not having to go to the secondary sources by getting everything natively with the added benefit of a cost reduction. So this gives you, when you build this, a holistic view of, say, a product, applications that span multiple accounts, even the line of business or your entire organization. And lastly, it gives you an easy correlation between your data. Now, one of my favorite quotes that I read is that data without context is meaningless. Data without context is meaningless. What this cross-account observability platform is giving us, it is giving meaning to data. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. I really loved your household example. And it is great to see how Amazon CloudWatch Cross-Account Observability helps you to have a global view across your organization and the power. So, seeing is believing, right? So I would like to invite Bobby Halayan to stage to show us how Amazon CloudWatch Cross-Account Observability helps us solving our centralized monitoring problems. Bobby?
Awesome. Good morning, everyone. Okay, so we do have a live demo today, and let's go ahead and check it out. All right, so first and foremost, what we're going to see here is I'm just going to give you an overview of a somewhat typical application. So in this case, I guess we have a observability workshop where we're on a pet adoption website. And a couple of key callouts, like we don't need to be like super intimately knowledgeable about this infrastructure, but what we can see is we have a EKS front end, so that's our EKS pet site front end. We have a couple ALB here, so there's like a search API, a pay for adoptions API, a list adoptions API, and then we have a status updater that does like Lambda to, or API gateway to Lambda to DynamoDB. Okay, so let's say we split this into multiple accounts, right? Normally, when we operate microservices or we're operating some sort of like big application, there's probably going to be some sort of account boundary there between transactions. So for the purposes of this case, we have our account split into our front end is running on a single account. We have our search and list adoptions API in a second account, and then everything else is in a third account. And what we're going to show first is what the experience looked like before you had cross-account observability. So I'll give you an overview of what our account structure looks like today. So what we did is we just set up a simple control tower environment. So you'll see we have that audit and log archive account. Obviously, I have my payer account, RAV payer, or reinvent payer. But then, yeah, we have a centralized observability account. Nothing's really running in there, but that's the account where we actually created our resource or monitoring observability sync, which is the resource that enables cross-account observability today. From here, you'll see we have our microservice A, B, C, and then D. I was getting very aspirational, thinking it's like, hey, let's put this in 4 accounts. And then I had to temper my own expectations. OK, so let's go ahead and take a look at our very first account here. So we have microservice A. We're logged into the AWS console. And let's take a look at this in full screen. And what we can see here is we have our pet site front end running on EKS. And then we can see there's a lot of downstream nodes, which is nice. It's interesting. You'll see we hit a step function, which then goes to Lambda. But you just see the Lambda context. You don't see anything past that because those Lambdas are in other AWS accounts. Or you'll see, hey, here's the call to the search service. And we see there's the search ELB. But then immediately, since that backend service exists in a different account, I immediately lost context. So let's imagine if I am the operator of this front-end API, if I do all the work to put in all the instrumentation, what that gives me is, it's pretty good. But then from a cross-account perspective, I can't see anything downstream. And when we work with customers on a daily basis, this is a constant struggle that comes up of how do I make sure we can view this all in one place? So let's take a look at another example here. And here we can see this is a microservice B. OK, so in here, and I promise I'll go faster through the other accounts. I think we kind of get the point of things operating in many accounts. But here we can see we have our pet site. We have our pay for adoption service. So we can see, hey, here's an ECS service. It's talking to database SQL calls. We're making other downstream calls here again to like an API gateway. But then again, right, we lose context again because that API exists in another account. So yet another example of when we're just looking at 3 accounts here. And every single account where we have the instrumentation, we're losing context. So let's say the front end, we see issues. OK, they go to the team that owns this specific API. And it's like, hey, everything kind of looks OK here, but it looks like we're having latency on a downstream call to API gateway. And then we got to go to the people that own that team. And then you compound that where you have many, many different teams. And just answering a simple question of like, what's our customer impact? Or what team is responsible for, or like what node or component is failing across many accounts, that can become incredibly challenging. And I'm sure we've all probably been there at one point or another. Maybe? Yeah. OK, so let's go ahead and we'll take a look at this very last account here. And here we can actually see, oh, that's where that API gateway was, right? So we see API gateway, it was problem, well, let's imagine it was. And now we can see it goes from Lambda to Dynamo. And we have a couple other services running in here, like our pet search service, and then a couple of like other Lambda functions. And these are actually connected by our step function from that very first account. So what I'm going to show you now is, let's take a look at what it looks like when we have a cross-account observability setup. And we actually are able to see the entire trace map for every component all in one place. On top of that, what we can also do here is, oops, I want to zoom in. X-ray groups here work as well. So I can now create specific groups of saying, hey, let me just see the list adoptions API. So from here, we can see how we have our pet site. Right down here, we can see that's in microservice A. Now we can see right here, ECS Fargate running in microservice B account. Or then let's jump to our pet search API in microservice C. So all of a sudden, we have 3 different components and 3 different accounts all visualized in a single service map here. In this case, we're not looking at a specific trace. This is just a grouping of traces that match a certain criteria. So for example, we can go to the list adoptions API. I can take a look at the entire pet site, for example. We can see things like doing different types of housekeeping, selected pet type searches, right? We can create all these APIs. And what we want to demonstrate here is that grouping works in a cross-account fashion. Now, a couple other cool things I want to show would be we also have a filtering option here, too. So let's say, for example, I want to see a map layout and say, hey, only show me the components in microservice C. That's immediately rendered on our dashboard here. or just show me A, or just show me B, and I can see which components actually correlate to which accounts. Or let's say I'll clear these filters here. And let's jump into a specific trace. And we'll talk about a couple of different neat things we can do here. So one thing being, we're able to then see, I guess who here is familiar with service map and has seen all this stuff? Is this relatively new for most people? Okay, awesome. let's dig into it then. So here, this is where we're able to do searching for our traces, right? And we can do this by filtering by any of these X-ray groups. So those groups are anything that's specific about that X-ray trace. So like the URL, the service type, the response code, latency. Those are all things that we have that are indexed, and we can then group on it. More importantly, we can even really do some neat things here where, I guess, is anyone familiar with the concept of like annotations in X-ray or metadata in OpenTelemetry? A couple? Okay. So essentially what we're doing is you can take any type of other value that's important to you, you can include it in your trace, and that gets indexed in X-ray. And what's really neat about that is we can then use those indexed annotations to create groups for traces. So think of it like maybe I'm running a multi-tenant application, and I want to do grouping by my tenant ID. Or maybe we're putting like major software versions or release versions in those traces. I can now start grouping by that. And then I can start comparing one over another. So it's incredibly powerful. And then the fact now we can also do it cross-account is, it's like chef's kiss, right? Okay, so let's take a look more at taking a look at these different node groups. So we can filter by just like a node type, for example. So I can say, hey, give me different types of nodes, or we can look at HTTP method, URLs, client IPs, instance IDs. We can look at root cause errands, and even we talked about annotations. So in this application, we're even annotating our pet sites at the pet type, so like a kitten or a bunny or a puppy, as well as the pet ID, so the specific ID of the pet that's being adopted. And then there's also AWS account, which is brand new. So this is also something that's indexed in your traces and you can search on. Now, let's go ahead and actually view a specific trace here. And if I'm lucky, this will work well. And if not, I have another tab open where we have it open. Yeah, OK. So here we actually see a specific trace. And in this trace, this is representation of a single API request that goes through the entire application. And we can select specific nodes here. And what this gives us is we can see the overview pane. And what that allows us to see is different details about the service, right? So we can see what account it came from. We can see what resources are involved, the account ID, how we instrumented it. If this was an ECS container, we can see that as well. For example, we can jump to Lambda. We can see the resource names, the function ARN, and some information about an overview, right? From here, we can also do the scroll down. We can see each service. And then from here, we have the idea of subsegments. So within a service, specific APIs we're calling. And of course, that's something we've had with X-ray and Service Lens for some time now. But what's really neat here is the log correlation. So what we're looking at here, and I know the text might be a little bit too small, but what I want to highlight here is you can see logs from API Gateway. So this is API Gateway from Microservice C. But then we can also see logs from a Lambda function in a different account. And then logs from back to API Gateway, back to Lambda, and then there's some ECS logs in there. So what we're doing is we're able to use the account ID, we're able to derive the log group name, or if we include the log group name within our trace segment, Service Lens is able to determine which log groups to look at. And then from there, as long as trace IDs are injected into our logs, in a lot of cases with, let's say, with Lambda or API Gateway, that's already there, or the Lambda execution ID is there, we're then able to run a logs insights query and then bring you back correlated logs. And now this works in a cross-account experience. So for example, like what we saw in Umar's demo, we can then look at selecting different log groups from different accounts. Being able to do this by account label, account ID, incredibly powerful. Or let's say if we're looking at another way to look at logs, we can take a look at contributor insights. So contributor insights allows us to look at things like top-end contributors. Here I created a couple different contributor insight roles. In this case, I'm looking at CloudTrail events by type and ARN. But then, of course, we have VPC flow logs. So for example, let's take a look at CloudTrail events by event type. And in this case, I'm not looking at logs across like 8 different accounts because I have my CloudTrail logs going to a single CloudWatch logs group. But let's say we have our CloudTrail logs in many different log groups. This same rule would still apply just as easily. Or maybe we can take a look at a different type of contributor insight rule where I'm looking at VPC byte transfer by source and destination IP address. So this can give me top contributors for that. But now what's really neat is if we take a look at the rule, I'll show you what's really powerful about contributor insights, specifically with being able to do this in a cross-account fashion. So before you would have to do this, you'd have to have a contributor insight rule in every single account where you're doing this. And then those visualizations at the organization level, they're not super valuable, right? Because you can only see in your own account. But if I'm responsible for many accounts, right, tens or hundreds or thousands potentially of accounts, I don't have that option. However, now what we can do with cross-account observability is I can just pick which accounts I want, or I can say even all of them. And then here what we're doing is we're just taking, and I'll actually zoom this in a bit here. We're just doing like /VPC flow log /star. So now I know any log group that has that prefix would be included in that rule. So let's say if we're operating in many, many different accounts, I can know that as long as the VPC flow logs start with that name, in every account in my org, it can be included. Okay, so a couple more things I'll show you, and then we'll wrap up the demo. But the very next thing is going to be in metrics. So we all know about how we can do cross-account dashboarding. That's obviously useful. Now, a problem we see with customers, or customers kind of report, if I'm building a dashboard, like what happens if I have ephemeral resources? So a resource goes away, or if I'm creating a dashboard, let's take a look at, we can create a simple widget here, right? Let's go and we'll say, I don't know, let's take a look at our application ALB metrics. And maybe I'm looking at per app ALB, and maybe I want to say, I don't know, we'll take a look at request count, for example. And then, boom, request count, easy. Okay, what happens if the ALB changes? Or what happens if there's a new deployment? Or what happens if like any of those things change? Somebody needs to go back and update this dashboard, right? Because we're looking at this graphed metric. If we can see this, there's the idea of a fully qualified metric name, right? So that's like the namespace, metric name, dimension key value pairs, right? And when we look at how the getMetricData API call works, it's like, hey, give me this specific metric and you get it back. So when you think of like a dashboarding perspective, that can get a little tricky because as things change, or if you're operating in many accounts, you may not even know what's running in those accounts. You need a better way to do this. And thankfully there is. Because what I can do instead of doing like a specific request, and this has worked for once again, another feature that has worked well before cross-account availability, but now, instead of just doing request count, I can say, hey, give me a graph of the search. And now I get a search expression. And what this search expression is looking at is any ALB that starts with the name request count. And we can see we have non-compliant request count, but maybe I just want to say specifically this metric name request count. So now this is across many different accounts. And then just show you what this actually looks like, if we take a look at these little time series here that show us the actual ALB names. I'll zoom that in a little bit for us. And we can add a dynamic label here. And what that label is going to be is a, maybe I'll zoom back out. I can add properties for the account ID. So here we can clearly see that we have ALB request count volumes from many different AWS account IDs. In this case, it's maxing out at 1 because I'm actually looking at the average. I should probably look at like the sum or something like that. But hopefully we get the picture, right? That these search expressions now work cross-account. So I can easily construct cross-account dashboards based off simple search expressions. So it's like, I think it's really cool. Now, first, then let's also kind of take a look quickly at what we can do in terms of getting set up and what that setup experience looks like. So what we can do is we'll go ahead and check out the settings here. And like we saw earlier, right, we can go to manage source accounts, and we can see there's many different source accounts here. But to go a little bit further into details, like what happens when we go through that setup prompt and we click all our buttons and then, boom, it just works, right? Let's talk about how it works. So what this actually does is it gives us a configuration detail, and you'll see this is the monitoring account sync ARN. So this is actually a resource that exists in the monitoring account. But what's better than a resource? A resource with a resource policy. So this is how we're enabling cross-account activity. And then in our simple resource policy here, we can see principal star. We can do OAM create link, OAM update link, and then all it is a conditional value for string equals principal org ID or principal org ID path. And then we just have the OAM resource types of log, metric, and trace. And then all that needs to be done is on the source account, you just need to hit the action, create link or update link. And as long as your source account has the permissions to do it, and then you've enabled it through the resource policy, job's done. Easy. And then what's even better is, since we can do those principal org ID conditions, you can do org paths, so specific OUs, or the entire org, or we can even just do a specific AWS account principal too. So if there's accounts outside the org, you can still enable this. More powerful than this is that also each member account or each monitoring account can share data with several other organization accounts. So that means I can have a central business unit account, maybe at an OU level, where all my accounts are sharing data there, but maybe we need to also share data with a security account. They can enable that as well. So it's not just one-to-one, it's one-to-many. Awesome. Yeah, and with that, that concludes all the stuff hopefully all the cool stuff I have to share with you all today. I'm going to invite Omar back up to the stage to wrap us up, but after the session, I'll be out in the hallway, happy to answer questions, and then if you do stop by the observability booth, I'll be there today as well as a few of my colleagues, and more than happy to talk. Thank you all.
Thank you, Bobby. I believe the feature resonates more after the demonstration, I guess. But what I have noticed is very few of you are aware of service lens feature. And when we are talking to our customers, they're all saying that they are looking for a centralized monitoring or consolidated view, a single pane of glass observability. And service lens is a feature that provides this capability in analyzing your applications. So I strongly suggest you give it a try and see its capabilities. And it's going to help you to monitor your applications in a much more better way. So it was a good demonstration. Thank you so much again, Bobby. And we are about to close the session. But before that, what I would like you to remember out of this session when you go home or your hotel from here is, if you're operating in multi-account organizations, Amazon CloudWatch Cross-Account Observability is here for you to help monitoring your applications. It is natively available in all commercial regions on your console now. And as I mentioned to you earlier, it comes with no extra cost, and it is easy to set up, only 2 steps. And afterwards, we are good to go. You can run your logs inside queries, metric search expressions, X-ray analysis, and see all your cross-account telemetry all in a single place. This is powerful. Thank you all for joining us today and participating in our launch announcement for Amazon CloudWatch Cross-Account Observability. Just like Bobby, I'm going to be down in the hall. Please feel free to stop by if you have any questions, comments, or feedback, or just to say hi. And we'll be more than happy to meet you and answer your questions.